Eric Richards is the next presenter. Um, so I've worked with Eric Richards a lot over the years, and I love working with him. He has so many great insights and is just a really kind human being. So I'm really excited to have him here tonight. Eric is a high school German teacher, author, and presenter, and 2021 ACTFL Teacher of the Year finalist. He's the author of a series of CI readers and other books for the World Language Classroom. I'll put a link to his books in the chat in a moment. And he also authored the stories for our levels 1 and 2 German curriculum. So if you didn't know we had it for Voces Digital, we do. We have a German curriculum through level 4. And I'll put a link to that too, because the short stories that he wrote for levels 1 and 2 are wonderful, and there's lots of great stuff in there. So we're really excited to have him today. So now I'll stop sharing so that you can share and make sure that you're co-host. Sorry.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Aaron. Am I good to share? Start sharing now?
Um, Caitlin, can you make him
Yes.
co-host? Sorry, one
I
minute.
think I can
Okay.
share.
Yep,
Double check. Let me just
you can.
see. Is all right.
We see.
Is everyone? What screen is everyone seeing? Does it say engaging students through reading?
Yes.
Well, it does. Okay, there's where we're at. Okay. Well, first, hi everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I hope everyone survived the time change. I know today was a little bit maybe harder getting up today or dragging a little bit if you live somewhere where they do the time change. But first, let me just say thank you for being here tonight. I know we're all incredibly busy. Our schedules are always packed between work and other obligations. So thank you for being here and taking the time to be here tonight. I do appreciate it. And I think I speak for everyone. The other presenters appreciate your time. All right, we'll go ahead and Aaron did the introduction, so I'm going to go ahead and we'll just kind of scroll through the introductions a little bit. I will tell you before we get started today that you can see my contact information, and you can feel free to contact me at any time. Aaron will share my email in the chat, so you can feel free to contact me anytime. If you ever do, all I do is ask for maybe a day or two to get back to you. I am a classroom teacher, have a family, so some of the days get pretty busy. They're pretty full, but I will get back to you. So, but please contact me with any questions. Um, and also, as we go through today, I just want to kind of tell you a little bit about the setup of this presentation. First, you are going to have access to this presentation. Everything that is on your screen right now, you'll have a link to this presentation. And I do want to let you know ahead of time that I will be skipping over some of the activities in the presentation, and that's just due to the time constraint. And I to tell you the truth, I went back and forth. Was I going to make the presentation concise or include some things I knew I wasn't going to talk about? And ultimately, I included some of the things I'm not going to talk about because I want you to have this as a resource to come back, whether maybe we missed something in the presentation or if I didn't speak clearly or too quickly. And it's a resource for you to and come back to and use as needed. So I just want to let you know if I skip something that is generally by design for this presentation. With this presentation, I just want what we're going to be doing today is we're going to engage with some activities that will help keep reading and the activities fresh and engaging for students. We want to differentiate and diversify some activities when approaching reading, and ideally we want to increase student participation and engagement with the text. We want to support our different skill sets when working with text, and we want to drive interactions with our text. And text can be books, readers, or whatever it is you're reading at the time. Um, uh, to have the interaction with the students. And also one of my goals for you this evening is to immediately take away some ideas to use in our classroom or online or whatever your situation is. So as we go through the different activities, really hoping that they're mostly more low prep. They don't require too much preparation. They can be used with the materials you have. So hopefully that today I can get you something easy to take back to your classroom to give a shot. So that's kind of the goals of what we'll be doing in today's presentation. And just real quick with the background, I do want you to know that I do all of these activities with my students in the classroom. I teach levels 1 through 4. As Aaron said, I'm a German teacher, and we do this in levels 1 through 4, 1 through 4. And the engagement and participation since we've started doing some of these activities has really, really increased. So I just wanted to give you a quick background. All right, and here in just a second, we're going to jump into the activities here. But first, I just wanted to give you a few things to consider. And Why do we want reading? I think as educators, we all know reading is very important for both the L1 and the L2. But I always ask myself, why do we want to try to make reading more enjoyable and drive students to truly engage with the text and understand it? And I think today, sometimes reading with students, I know I've had some conversations with educators, is just such an important skill for students to have and to develop. And we really want to drive our students back to the text, especially in the L2. And why? I'm not going to read all these, I'm just going to pick out a couple. And if we think about reading and why we really want to engage with the text, is that picking up words by meaning is 10 times faster than intensive vocabulary instruction, according to Stephen Krashen. And I find some of these just very, very fascinating. Incidental learning of words during reading may be the easiest and single most powerful means of promoting large scale vocabulary growth. And the last one is from Dr. Bill VanPatten. And he says for maximum vocabulary development, learners need to read all along the way, since most vocabulary development in both the L1 and the L2 is incidental, meaning that vocabulary is learned by a byproduct of some other intention, normally reading. And so I just like to kind of throw that out there just to kind of keep that in the back of your mind, how important reading is for our students for development, not only in the L1, but also in the target language. I really find that fascinating. Okay, so first, we're going to jump right here in a second. But before we get started, I just want you to remember that you are the expert in your classroom. So you know your students, you know their abilities. So just take the overall ideas that you see here, implement them as you see fit, play to your strengths in your teaching style, and you're going to do great. All right, are we ready to dive in? And I will say before I get started, if I miss something in the chat, someone can just holler at me. I'm trying to keep a little eye on the chat, but if I miss it, I'll come to it at the end, or if it's pressing, just someone can cut me off. All right. So let's go ahead and think about reading and in comprehension questions when we read. We as educators, we want our students to show us that they have comprehended what they've read. And of course, we want to make it comprehensible to our students. But I ask myself is, can our students show comprehension other than simply answering questions over the reading? And I ask myself that quite a bit because my main goal is, and I want us to keep this in the back of our minds, is how can we get our students to show that they've comprehended what they read? That's the big overarching question for us. So with that being said, is I want to say is a lot of readers, they come with comprehension questions, and comprehension questions are great. Do them. They're there for a reason. I think they're great. I do comprehension questions in my classroom. I think it's very important. I will make a quick aside here. The screenshots you're going to see are actually from readers offered through here in Voces, El Documento. And so we're showing you real things out of the readers so that you guys know. And I believe that we're going to be raffling off these books at the end. So I just wanted to let you know that these are real pages from real readers that we use. So again, going back to the comprehension questions. So let's go back to the idea of, can they show us they've understood what they read without just answering questions? Again, I think they're great. I use them and it's wonderful. However, it's one thing to consider is just turn it around. Simply have students write the questions for the chapter in the story. Because you're going to hear me say this multiple times today, is that if students, they cannot write a question for what they read if they did not understand what they read. And that is my main goal, showing comprehensibility. And I believe it or not, this is just a simple twist. If you've never tried it, I'm going to encourage you to do it. Have students write the questions for whatever it is you read, the chapter or whatever section you read. Students do well with this because if they're writing the questions, it's probably meaningful to them. And in a great way to kind of personalize is after I collect the questions, I can ask the students the questions that they wrote. So they have buy-in and ownership here with the questions. And you can actually bend those a little bit different ways. You can have students get partners and ask each other questions. You can do it whole class. And one of the things I like to do is if I have whiteboards in my classroom, and a lot of times I'll just give them a whiteboard and I can ask questions. It just gives them a quick feel. A lot of the times that they made, and they can just hold up the answer for me. Because the idea is I need to know if they comprehended the question. So again, very small twist, just have them write the questions and for the chapter to show you that they understood and comprehended what they read. So, all right. But otherwise, as we read, a lot of times we work with a book, and I want to go back and I want to get repetition with book. I want to drive them back to the text. And one of the ways I do that is maybe we can go back and have students read. We want to target things, maybe specific words, vocabulary, structures, and or themes found throughout a reader. So for example, I might give them a piece of paper here, may look like this, the one on your screen, and they just kind of fill it out really quickly. Just talk about some of the people when in the chapter, whether names or descriptions, locations. Were there any dates and times mentioned in what you're reading? Some basic information. Was there any action or culture involved that you could that they could include? Just real quick notes to show me that they understood. Maybe I give them something like this, just happen to be in German. Maybe just some basic information, or maybe we're saying, hey, let's go back. Can you pull out any positive phrases? What would you consider a positive phrase in the reading or a negative phrase in the reading? Real simple for students, but again, we've worked with it. I want to drive them back. Maybe you're dealing with a reading that is dealing with some clothing, and maybe they can list some of the clothing that was mentioned, or accessories, or some of the colors, just something to drive them back that you can target some of the themes and vocabulary with them or designs. And again, you could do that for our French teachers here. If there was something that was pretty descriptive with, home, talk about what type it is, where it's at, the price, and so forth, whatever it may be that students can pull out of a text. And you can bend this to anything that you really need to bend it to, as far as the text is concerned. So, um, I do want to say that we're up. Part of the presentation is interactive, and I'm going to ask just a couple of people just to kind of get a quick feel. We're going to do this really quick with our time constraint here. That I like to do sometimes too is after we worked with it and the students are familiar with it, I want to go back and I want to target maybe some vocabulary or structures. So I'm going to ask maybe anyone who's comfortable, and I'm just going to put into three different ones here, and you can choose whichever one you want. And I'm going to give you the text in just a second, but we're going to take just a minute here. Uh, After you read the text, which will be on your screen shortly, just write down three sentences from the text that contain the word good, or three sentences from the text that contain the structure says. Again, you can work with individual vocabulary, structures, phrases, or we can work with topics and themes. Can you write down any three sentences from the text that contain the topic of technology and related items? All right, so for our purposes, we're going to read this little text right here. Okay. And well, let's go ahead and actually just stick with technology and technology related items. We'll just stick to that one topic here instead of trying to break it apart because of the time constraint. So if I could have a couple of volunteers read this small text here, starting with "It's good that you study computer science," and can you find three sentences that deal with technology or technology related items, and just throw them in the chat for us here. I'll just take a minute if a couple people just want to volunteer real quick and see what you find. Again, that's a page from the book in German this time, and this is just the English translation of it. And I would do this with my students. So yeah, I'm seeing here in the chat here some good ones here. Yeah, and I know this is going very quickly, and I wish we had some more time to kind of work with this and dive into this a little bit. But I can see if you look in the chat, you're seeing some really sentences. And what's that doing is they're telling me just kind of, again, this has been really quick. They've shown me that they're saying, okay, I can see, I'm read, and I've if comprehended and I've understood that these are technology and technology related terms. Maybe that was a focus of one of your readings. Again, it can be any topic or theme found throughout a book. Or again, if we were to scroll back up, we could say, hey, is there a structure or verbs we want them to really target and kind of go back and get that extra repetition with the reading? And why do we want that extra repetition? We go back, remember what we said at the beginning, how important reading is for vocabulary growth for students. So I just want to get that extra repetition. But again, they're showing me they understood that they can pull out themes and topics in it. But those look great. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you jumping in the chat and doing that. I know that was really quick, but hopefully we got that quick feel of students there um, that a student might do. It's going to obviously take a little bit more time in your classrooms, but hopefully we got that idea. All right. Is everyone doing okay? I hope everyone's doing okay. We're going to keep moving on. And we're going to go ahead. And another thing I like to do with my summaries, and I think a lot of educators do, is maybe, or with my readings, is we say a quick summary. Can we do a quick retell of what the story wrote? Can we do maybe a timed writing, or just simply a retell of the story and a writing with it? So maybe we can spice that up for students, and maybe we can make it a little bit more accessible, especially for our beginning students, maybe with some of the simpler things that they read and at the level they're at. So with that being said, is one of the activities, I get a lot of mileage out of this. My students love this activity, and I'll show you ways to vary this activity to keep it fresh for students. But instead of doing just a complete retell of the or say, hey, write a paragraph, or say, hey, do a timed writing, I asked them to distill this into sometimes just a 5 word summary, and I'll get into the variations here shortly. And when you tell a student 5 words, it's very unintimidating for a student. Every student's like, I can do 5 words. But really, what it's going to do is students will have drive back to the text, and they'll keep rereading because they're really going to try to pull out 5 words that really summarize the chapter or whatever section that you read. And in fact, I think students, after they do it a few times, especially maybe even your upper level students, they realize distilling things down to a small number is actually much harder than it seems. But in the beginning, for my beginners, they love it. It's 5 words. They say, hey, can we summarize this in 5 words? And I say in the target language. It's not a full sentence. You don't have to put 5 words in one sentence. It can be 5 words, bullet points. And maybe then I give them a little bit more direction, like it can relate to the reading and try to convey a scene in the story, feeling or an emotion of a character or a setting. Is it, or can they try to describe a character with adjectives, but only in 5 adjectives to show me that they understood the feeling and the overall understanding of this? And I will give you a tip. This can be a standalone activity. It doesn't have to relate to reading after you do it a few times, but it's pretty easy to relate it to a reading, and it gives that backing for the students to drive back to. So here were some examples that were actually from my classroom. I just want to show you how unintimidating this is. And one of them, I asked them to describe what was the weather. It was kind of what part of the reading we're doing was very descriptive as far as weather was concerned. And this is what they came up with. And one of them was nice weather. And I put the German with the English translation there. And again, those are 5 words. And you can kind of tell, like, I thought they did an excellent job kind of really painting a picture for me in 5 words. In another scene, it was it was, loud, windy, was kind of bad weather. And then in one, we had school where the characters were talking about school and homework, and this is what they came up with. But I think in 5 words, these were just some examples. Most of my students do an amazing job with this, but they really painted it. And it's very unintimidating, and they really like it to do 5 word summaries. And again, when I say a 5 word summary, the numbers are really kind of arbitrary. You can change that to whatever you want. So, for example, I'm going to skip down just one here where it says change the parameters of summary depending how much you read, where you read, just a 10 word summary. Make instead of 5, a 10 word, 7. It doesn't matter, whatever you want. And sometimes a change that does keep it real fresh for your students, pick whatever number of words. Another thing to do is you can ask students, with their understanding of the language grows, hey, you can only use verbs. Capture the action that happened in what we read. What are let's say in this case, 7 verbs. So I just want verbs. Capture the action, the 7 verbs, the action that capture this chapter. Or use only nouns. They can only use nouns. In German, it's super easy because every noun is capitalized. So I don't really need to explain too much there. Or use only adjectives. But again, you could target even parts of speech for your students and say, hey, try to convey that feeling. But when you do change it, it does help keep your students it fresh. And I will tell you what's really fun is it's one of the books, like I know that we're raffling off, they're dialogue heavy. There's lots of good dialogue in the books. And the students can retell a dialogue in the target language that if there's 2 people talking in a chapter, but they can only speak to each other using 5 words. And again, that's so unintimidating for students to add 5 words and respond with 5 words and respond with 5 words, or whatever number really, that they can actually kind of recreate a dialogue in 5 words and really capture the essence. But really, what they're also doing, again, and you'll hear me say, we're going back to show that they are comprehending what they're reading, because they can't do this if they have not understood what they read and comprehended what they read. So that's a really fun activity, really super easy. It's a lot of fun. Do it a couple of times with the students, and then they'll really get good at it. And I will tell you one more time, as they get up in the upper levels, they'll want to tell, if I say, hey, do this in 5 words, they get mad at me. They're like, I need more than 5 words. But what I notice students doing is they're going to reread, reread, reread. And those are the repetitions with the language that I want. It's kind of something I do, but they do start realizing, man, distilling this down is really hard. All right. I'm gonna go ahead, and this is, sorry, I'm time checking here. The part I'm gonna skip over a few of these, okay? You just gonna skip over this one. You can come back. You're gonna have access to this uh, presentation. Another thing, kind of a variation you could say maybe on the 5 words is just kind of change the number, a 10-3-1 approach. Maybe, and these again, very unintimidating for students to drive them back and show that they understood by showing, write down 10 important words from the chapter. What do you think 10 words are? Were there 3 new words that you picked up in the reading or that were unfamiliar with you first? And what is one question you have like from the reading? And it could be a question over the language. What does something mean? What maybe they have a question about why would a character do that, but you could do that. And there's all kinds of ways to vary this. Again, the numbers are always arbitrary, but you can take the idea and bend it. So for example, too, you could have, hey, I maybe you're working with parts of speech, what your situation is, and say, could you write down 3 adjectives, 2 nouns, 1 infinitive, or a verb form? You know, if that's something that your students would need to understand. It can be any set of numbers. Or you could write down, this is really fun too, is pick 3 emotions. Like what do you think 3 emotions were conveyed in the chapter you just read? Again, you can change it. Or 2 locations if they talked about locations. And what was one cultural element? And I think really with what I call the 10-3-1 approach is that you can really just bend it to whatever you want and keep it fresh. And again, pull out emotions, pull out locations, pull out cultural elements. And if we were to scroll back up, you know, the first original one paper with the kind of the circle that I showed you, pick out the action, pick out dates, anything like that you can do. So all right. Hopefully we're doing okay. Again, I just want to stress again, my goal is to give you an activity you can take back to your classroom immediately without too much prep, and hopefully you'll get some mileage and some positive feedback from it. Okay, again, I'm going to go ahead and scroll right through this. All right, but I'm going to go ahead. And now this is you guys are up one more time here. This is kind of similar in the fact it's called condensing content. And again, this is another one I get a ton of mileage out with my students. Okay, so we've maybe worked with the chapter a little bit. Now, and they can do this without reading, depending on their level. The first time I do anything, I make sure we're all good, especially with my beginners, my upper levels, that I can kind of let them off on their own and they know what we're doing. And they don't need as much direction from me. So with that being said, this is you're going to be on. So I'm going to need some people in the chat here in a minute. Is what you could say is we're going to read the text or the chapter or the section wherever we're at, and we're just going to write down 5 or whatever number of the most important sentences that retell the story. Now, I tell my students they're not allowed to change the sentence. It has to come directly from the text, and they can't combine sentences. It has to be the original sentence from the text. So what I want to do to kind of give you that feeling is, and you're going to see them again, what I'm trying to do kind of like, you know, a little sneaky in the background is drive them back to the text. I'm thinking vocabulary growth, getting repetition with reading, and they're going to show me that they understood it by saying, hey, I'm going to pull out 5 sentences from this text that best summarize it, best give me the overall view of what we read. All right, for you, we're going to go ahead and here's the text. Again, another page from our book. Can you just, anyone in the chat, if I could just get a couple of people, I'd really appreciate it. Would you be willing to write down 4 of the most important sentences that retell this chapter here? If you can see the text on the screen, that's the text. Could you just pick out 4 that you think best retell it? And just throw it in the chat. If I could have 1 or 2 of you, I'd really appreciate it. Obviously the Spanish on the left, English is on the right. But if I'm just going to take a minute here. I'm going to grab a drink of water. If anyone wants to jump in 4 sentences that you think best retell it, I'd really appreciate it. All right, I'm looking at the chat. I know this one takes a little bit more, but if you are involved in trying to do this, or if you're doing it in your mind, that's okay too. If nobody wants to put it in the chat, that's fine. The idea is maybe as we look behind the curtain that you are saying, okay, students are going to read and they're going to reread and they're going to try to pull out and they're going to prove to me that they've understood what they read because they're going to give me a summary here. But we're just going to use the text. We're going to back into the text to drive back to them. So other than that, like I said, and I would say quick tip is to push it to the slower side, like 4 or 5 sentences, depending what you read, because it will force them to keep reading. And then again, they'll probably yell and you say, I need 1 more sentence, need 1 more sentence. But what that's really showing me is they're understanding what they're reading, and they know they need that extra sentence to fully convey the message they want to convey. So But all right, I appreciate. I see some people throwing these some things in the chat, and I really do appreciate you doing that. So again, I'm not trying to rush everybody. I know we're just on a time constraint, and this would obviously last longer in your classroom with your students. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. I'm seeing. Yeah, thanks, Lynn, Kristen, Susan. I really appreciate it. I see what you did there, and but again, here's the idea. Again, I don't mean to rush anybody, but I'm going to go ahead and keep moving here, just because of time, as we come here a little bit closer to the end of time here. But again, just wanted to have you get that quick feeling of what it might to be a student. But I hope you can also see a little bit behind the curtain what's going on. All right. I do apologize if anyone's still looking at that, trying to figure it out. I am going to move on, but again, you can always come back to this. So again, I appreciate everybody in the chat. Thank you. All right. And what you can do though is when you do this, you can also have an extension. What I do is I have the students write down their 4 or 5, whatever number of sentences from what we read. We just read a chapter and they've just summarized it with sentences from the reading. And what I do is I have students then compare. You can get a lot more mileage out of this. Is students compare sentences with a partner, and they can actually say, "Hey, look at that! We if it was 5 sentences, we had 3 of the same sentences, or we had 4," and they can compare. And then, really, what you can do then too is continue on. Say, "All right, you and your partner compared sentences. Now you need to come up with a new 4 or 5, whatever number of sentences, and write them down. And you guys have to agree about it. They can talk about it. They can refer back to the text." And you can literally just keep growing this until you get the whole class involved, because then that couple could turn to another couple, compare again, and then those 4 would have to come up with the next 4 or 5, agree on 4 and 5, and then those 4 could turn to another 4, until you come up with the class, and the class decides what are the best 4 or 5 sentences, whatever number would best summarize that chapter for. So I hope you can kind of see that how that would work in your head. All right, just a few more here um, that you can do with students that are pretty simple. You can come back to, for example, a concept, a mind map. You can make them do a visual presentation of the chapter story, short sentences. Maybe this would be a character mind map, and it kind of just gives that student the ability to map out a character or a scene or a chapter. Okay. Oh, okay, I'm gonna skip over blackout poetry. This is a really cool one. It's a lot of fun. I'm gonna tell you, come back, look at it, read through it. It's really cool what you can do with blackout poetry. No, it wasn't my idea. I put the link in there so you can check it out. But it was really fun. I do this with my students, and they really, really like this idea. So I apologize. I have to stick or skip over this, but do come back. It's a lot of fun for them to work with blackout poetry with their reading. All right, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep going. Sorry, come back, read it. All right, I'm just gonna give you a few more things just to think about. There are drawing activities you can do with students, and they can, for your artistically inclined students, they can actually show you they comprehended readers through artwork and through sketches and drawing, and you can come back to those. That can be really powerful and creative for students. Doodling. Let me just give you these quick facts about doodling. And this is something I got into, and I think if Keith is still in the audience, Keith was the one who really kind of turned me on to this. Thank you, Keith, with the whiteboards and doodling. But there's just it's really a powerful thing to do in the class, and I've had so much success with it. And you can see some of the ideas of the power of doodling while reading. As you can see, drawing information that was to be learned was found to enhance memory and to be a reliable replicable means of boosting performance. And the study shows that while doodling, even this is just the listening, recall 29% more information while doodling to activate that part of the brain. And I will take 29% in all my students as far as recalling. I love it. So doodling can be really, really a powerful, powerful thing in the classroom. I give my students a whiteboard, we have markers, and we do this in class. And there's a variety of ways to do this. Just a couple real quickly. If you want to make this into a listening activity, I could read a chapter or a scene very out loud, very slowly, and they have to doodle what they're hearing. Or actually with the Voces platform will listen to stories. I'll just hit play because they have people that read it on their platform. It's awesome. And they listen and they don't see the text and they're doodling and they show me that they actually understood what they understood or what they heard. Or we do this with reading too. I can read it out loud and they don't have the text, or I can read it out loud, they have the text, or sometimes I can just give them a text and I say, could you go ahead? And I give them the parameters and doodle and draw and show me what you understood by drawing. And then just a quick, they can hold it up, show me, and I can see immediately if they understood what they read and they can put in the different details in drawing. That sometimes isn't always readily available through writing. So I know that was super fast. I'm going to point you to one thing here where it says, if you go to my blog, I have it just, you'll see it's a blog. It's called Whiteboard Series. I share all this stuff. It's free. I have a whole whiteboard series I do with whiteboards and doodling and drawing in my classroom with tons of activities that you can do with both readers. And if you have the Voces platform, which you can do with that, or actually most platforms. So, all right. Oh gosh. All right. I know I'm about out of time. I'm coming down here to the last couple minutes, and I definitely want to respect everyone's time and hanging in there with me. And I'm going to give you one more. And then if there's any questions, we'll go from there. Uh, a bonus. Sometimes, I think sometimes in the classroom, students will tell me, "Oh, did we do anything today?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. We just spoke German for 40 minutes, interacted, read, but we didn't do anything," because I think sometimes students, and I really do have to kind of, I don't want to say train, but maybe give them a new thought to say, hey, when you come into my classroom, we're not just going to open up a computer, do an assignment or whatever. It's going to feel much different in here. And by the way, I'm not shorting anything anyone does, by the way. I'm not, I'm just saying for my personal classroom. So sometimes I got to say, hey, you may sometimes feel like we didn't quote unquote do anything, but I promise you, your brain is processing, you're doing a lot of heavy lifting. So, but sometimes students just need to feel like school. And sometimes I have to make class feel like school for them because that's the setting and that's what they know. So a lot of times, and this is what I do with students, and I show this is a great way to show students how important context is with my students because I always say we have to contextualize because we do a lot of reading in my classroom. It's very important, like I said, and like you're going to hear all week, and I do a lot. But I always can say, hey, context is so important. We do reading strategies sometimes, especially with my German ones. I feel like a reading teacher. It's awesome, but in the end, this is what I give my students. I give them, hey, a word or structure, something that we're going to come across in the reading, no context. And I want them to predict what they think that word or structure means just by looking at it before we even read. And then we read, and after reading, I say, hey, can you, after we read, do you want to change or adjust your prediction? And a lot of times they do, but as a teacher, you can see that light bulb go off like, oh, I can see how important the context of reading and why it's important when I'm reading, I'm actually reading and not just looking at words on a page and turning the page when I see everybody else turn a page. So it shows them that context and they'll adjust it. And then I just ask, was there any, what, just to make them kind of think, why did they change? If they did change it, something that figured it out. And I do eventually, we'll give them the answer and we'll say, hey, what helped you? And or what tipped you off. So, and this, by the way, really just, it makes it feel like school for students and it's okay to use every once in a while. I do it and they enjoy it, but it's kind of that like work sheet feel type deal. And some students crave that, which I understand. All right, with that being said, I do want to, I feel like I threw a lot at you in a very short amount of time. And again, my intention is for you to take it back with you, check out the blog, lots of activities for you to try out. You feel free to contact me. Again, you have access to all of this. You can contact me. So I really do hope you found some value, it's at least something to think about, some quick activities that you can take back to your classroom to really promote reading and engaging with that text. Nothing has to be done all at once. Maybe you pick one, try it a couple times, and then when you feel comfortable, you move on and just kind of keep, maybe some of this will work. Maybe it doesn't work the first time, try it a second time. Maybe you have a little bit more success and just slowly work through the different options and always play to your strengths. And that's what I tell educators, hey, just because I do something or somebody else does something, it's just you're the expert, your students know you. And if you're not you, they're going to see through that really, really quickly. And it's just not going to work. So be yourself. So again, there is my contact information. I think we got like a minute or two. And whew, that was a lot. Okay. I do appreciate everyone's attention and being here with me today. Hopefully you got a little something out of this and some values.